What do me and Lance Armstrong's balls have in common? We're both single. Hey! What's good, fam? Teacher Eddie back with another reaction. It's ERB time. Babe Ruth, the great Bambino, versus Lance Armstrong. Lance Armstrong, not a big fan. But, hey, it's ERB, so let's do it.
Babe Ruth versus Lance Armstrong! Bring it! Before I let loose with this ruthless aggression, I'll let you be the second fat woman here in my confession. I admit it, I did what I had to do to win. I'm an athlete, you're a specimen of sin with your drinking and smoking.
Damn. All right. Coming out hot.
Ruth versus Lance Armstrong! Bring it! Before I let loose with this
ruthless aggression. So that has a double meaning there. Of course, a play on Babe Ruth's name, Ruth, ruthless. He's going to have some ruthless aggression. And I remember that Oprah Winfrey interview. That's the fat woman he's referring to, where he said his ruthless aggression, his ruthless desire to win. I remember that because it reminds me of John Cena. Ruthless aggression.
Aggression, I'll let you be the second fat woman here in my confession. I admit it, I did what I had to do to win. I'm an athlete, you're a specimen of sin with your drinking and smoking and choking down food.
Yeah, so Babe Ruth, of course, he played in the 19 teens all the way through, I believe his last year was 1935. He played from, I want to say 1916 to 35. Yeah, he played 20 years. And he was not known for his training, even though his weight is something that's a little, kind of out there as far as the stories go. His weight really became an issue later on in his career. He was very fit in his early years. If you take a look, especially when he was with the Red Sox, the early Yankees, he got a little full of himself in the mid-20s because, by his early 20s, he had already set the single season record for home runs. He had broken the home run record. He hit the longest home run in insert any park that was available at the time, and including Negro League parks, including barnstorming parks. He was just the biggest thing ever. And he let himself go. 1925 season was actually his worst season during his prime years. But then, of course, he comes back in 1926. Then in 1927, he hits the 60 home runs, has arguably one of the greatest batting years ever. But he was known for drinking, for whoring, for eating a dozen hot dogs in one sitting. But then again, drinking and whoring, that's pretty much baseball up through today. But especially, everyone from Babe Ruth to Ty Cobb to Mickey Mantle. In the 80s, it was cocaine, amphetamines, all that stuff. So, but Armstrong, of course, physically fit, just an athletic specimen. But to call yourself an athlete while cheating, I don't know.
I know French dudes with better manners than you. So swing, batter, show me what a fatter rapper could do. I beat cancer, I can sure as hell crack you. Strong,
I thought, that was a missed opportunity. As far as I'm concerned.
And smoking and choking down food. I know French dudes with better manners than you.
Yeah, well, George Herman Ruth, as he was known, from birth, who eventually then, of course, becomes Babe Ruth. At the age of 6 or 7, he was sent away by his parents to an orphanage. I think it was called St. Mary's Industrial School for Boys. And he was there until adulthood, and he met a priest there named Brother Matthias, who basically taught him everything as far as baseball goes. He was a natural from early on, from age 7 or 8. And then the Baltimore Orioles actually bought him and legally adopted him. They were his guardians because he just turned 18. Then he was sent to Boston, and then, of course, the curse of the Bambino. Boston trades Babe Ruth, well, sells Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees for an ungodly sum at the time of $125,000. It was an insane amount of money. And they called him Babe because he had grown up in an orphanage, not really knowing anything of the outside world. One of the first things that he did when he got out was he discovered elevators. He never knew what an elevator was. He didn't understand how they worked, and he would tip the elevator operator to just ride him up and down, up and down. So he was like a babe in the woods, and that's why the name stuck. Called him Babe Ruth. But manners-wise, yeah, he could at times, be a bit of a jerk. But when it came to kids especially, he was one of the kindest people you could really ever meet. And he was somebody who wasn't stupid, but you could get over on him with stuff. And he was very careless. One time a teammate asked him to borrow $5, and Ruth just handed him a bill without even realizing he gave him a $500 bill. And the teammate, thankfully, was honest enough to come back to him and say, "Babe, you gave me a $500 bill." And I was like, "Oh, I thought I lost that, kid." He never remembered people's names. For the love of everything that is holy, he had teammates that he played with for 10 years, never remembered their names. It wasn't on purpose. He even was embarrassed by it, but he just called everybody kid. "Hey, kid. What's up, kid? Lou Gehrig. Hey, kid." So the manners thing, whatever, but...
So swing, batter, batter, show me what a fatter rapper could do. I beat cancer, I can sure...
Yeah, so swing, batter, batter, that's a taunt against batters during baseball. He's calling him fat, fatter rapper. And Lance Armstrong says, "I beat cancer, I sure as hell can crack you." This would have been a killer line, because guess what Babe Ruth died of? Cancer. Nasal cancer that then spread to his throat and eventually killed him within 2 years. He died in 1948. He was born in 1895, so he's 53, but he actually thought he was 54. There was a mix-up, and he didn't realize until he saw his birth certificate when he went to get a passport that he was actually born in 1895, not 94. But for the rest of his life, he just kept on claiming he was born in 1894. So he thought he was 54, but he was actually 53 when he died. But this would have been a killer, mic drop line against Babe Ruth. If he had mentioned, "I beat cancer," guess who didn't, right?
As hell crack you!
Live strong, beat cancer! Congratulations! Now I'll drop your ass faster than your own foundation! Third base with an Olsen twin! That's the sensation! She's just a little girl! Would you give her a bracelet?
Would you give her a bracelet? You give her some candy? Pull her into your creepy van? Yeah, he's saying, "Oh, you beat cancer, big deal." Ruth is like, "Man, you messed up, man. You could have gotten me right there, but you threw that one for a ball, and I ain't taking it," right? And then he mentions the Olsen twin, and Armstrong was twice her age when they had a thing. So he's saying, "You're calling me out for being creepy and banging whores. Meanwhile, you're banging girls old enough to be your daughter. Come on, man." Your own foundation. So, of course, once he finally admitted to taking steroids, of course, the Live Strong Foundation disassociated itself from Lance Armstrong.
Third base with an Olsen twin! That's the sensation! She's just a little girl! Would you give her a bracelet? All nature knows you ride too tight in the crotch! You're as bored as your Tour de France to watch! So come on!
Well, that is true. You ride tight in the crotch? They do. Those shorts are mad tight, but of course, for bicycle riding, they're perfect. But also, Lance Armstrong has that one nut, so he rides really tight in the crotch. But also the Tour de France, I mean, in all honesty, because I remember the whole Lance Armstrong deal when he won those 7 Tour de France titles in a row. But I never knew one single person who actually watched the Tour de France. I mean, it's televised, but do you really know anybody who watches the Tour de France? I'm sure there's going to be 1 or 2 people in the comment sections be like, "I watch the Tour de France." Well, you know what? Lucky you. I'm sure, that's good time invested there.
Oh, little buddy, don't look so pissed! With all that blood and attitude, you're like a menstrual cyclist!
You're gonna kill me, Ruth. Menstrual cyclist. Yeah, one of the steroids that he took was, I believe, from his cancer treatment. It was it had something to do with his blood. Whereas, other, steroids, for example, deal with muscle tissue and regeneration and all that stuff. The one he took had something to do with his blood. So the blood and the menstrual cyclist play on menstrual cycle. Chef's kiss.
Before black men can compete, are you kidding me? That's like having a pasta contest without Italy. You're an orphan who found his way to fortune and fame. Just think what you could have done if you would have actually trained.
Yeah, that's against a few baseball players. The big one that comes to mind, of course, is Mickey Mantle. If Mickey Mantle had taken care of himself, and if Mickey Mantle hadn't completely blown out his knee in his rookie season, thanks to Joe DiMaggio, what could have been? And it's the same with Ruth. Because when he actually did train to get himself back into shape in 26, he was better than he was, in his early 20s. He accomplished much more in his late 20s than he did in his early 20s, as far as batting goes. But if he had actually trained... Now, the thing with the black athletes, of course, number one, Ruth did play, because Ruth played, the 154 games during the major league season, but he would play another 100 games during the off season to make money, because they weren't getting paid the $20 million a year they are now. So Mickey Mantle sold cars in the off season. Roger Maris sold life insurance, So Babe Ruth would barnstorm, because up until that point, there were no baseball teams west of the Mississippi. So people in California and Texas and Seattle, they pretty much just read in the newspapers, what was going on. There wasn't television yet, of course. So a lot of these players would tour the rest of the country in the offseason to pick up more money, and they would actually play a lot against Negro League teams. And a lot of Negro Leaguers at the time, from Cool Papa Bell and everybody else, everybody said, you could tell when Babe Ruth, you could close your eyes and you knew when Babe Ruth hit a ball. So no matter what the opposition was, Ruth killed it. And the other thing I say to people when they say, well, Ruth did all that stuff. Yeah, but the whole point is nobody else did what Ruth did. Nobody did what Ruth did. Ruth set not only batting records, but pitching records. He had the most consecutive scoreless innings in the World Series until Whitey Ford broke it almost 50 years later. It took 50 years for Aaron to beat his career home run record, and it took him 3,000 more at-bats to do it than it took Babe Ruth, right? It took Roger Maris 8 more games to hit 61. So the whole point is his record stood, and a lot of them still stand today, and it took super athletes many, many decades later to break them. But the whole point, none of his contemporaries could do what he did. He was the first man to 30 home runs, 40 home runs, 50 home runs, 60 home runs. The first man to 300, 400, 500, 600, 700 home runs. And when he retired, the only person who was close to him was Gehrig with 493 home runs. So again, that's my defense of Ruth. And of course, Negro Leaguers and everything else, it's the biggest what if in baseball. What if people like Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige. Look at what Satchel Paige accomplished in the major leagues when he was 50. When he was 50, he was pitching shutouts. He was winning World Series with the Cleveland Indians. But to take everything away from Ruth by just saying, well, he didn't, play against Negro League players at the time, that's simplifying the argument.
On the pinnacle of physical condition, while you dip your stick in prostitutes and call it foul tipping. Are you tripping? You'll be nothing but a skeleton, messing with the fellow in yellow who will be pedaling like hell up in the Peloton.
Again, he's going back to the whores. Look, number one, What's wrong with sex workers? What do you got against sex workers, Lance? I mean, if anyone's prostituted themselves, it's you, buddy. You prostituted your whole legacy for those wins. So, but yeah, Ruth was never foul tipping. There was no foul tipping. Ruth would scream out on trains to all of his teammates and be like, "All right, boys, if there are any women on this train who ain't fucking, they should get off right now." I mean, literally, that's stuff he would say, right? He would yell out to even the reporters, all right, fellas, who wants to get some ass tonight? So Ruth was not apologetic about it. Ruth said, hey, and you have to understand, this is somebody who was abandoned by his parents. It's not like his parents died. They just gave him up because they couldn't handle him. And he grew up in an orphanage until he was an adult. And then he was taken by the Baltimore Orioles, adopted by them, told what to do. He wanted to enjoy life. I mean, seriously, if you look at his circumstances from when he came from.
Against the toxin in a bathing suit filled with more artificial ingredients than a baby Ruth. That may be way too soon, but I'm calm.
The baby Ruth. This is an interesting story. So, of course, when Babe Ruth hits it big, everybody tries to cash in somehow. And so they come out with the Baby Ruth candy bar. Now, Babe Ruth was like, oh, this is great, but where's my money? Right? Bitch better have my money. But the company said, no, we didn't name it after you. Come on, babe, take it easy. We named it after Grover Cleveland's daughter. Her name was Ruth as well. And she was actually like a really popular person at the time. Like the nation adored her. But come on, you did not name the candy bar after Grover Cleveland's daughter, Ruth. Okay, baby Ruth. So Ruth actually never saw a penny from the Baby Ruth candy bars.
I'm not talking about those Italian syringes you brought. The Sultan of SWAT will knock you right out of the park and round the basin to the sound of uproaring applause.
That's the other thing that I love about Ruth are the nicknames. The nicknames for Ruth are just majestic. So, of course, you got Babe Ruth, the Babe. A lot of his teammates never called him Babe, though. They called him either George or Jidge, in Irish pronunciation. But you had the Sultan of SWAT, the Wazir of Wham, the Colossus of Clout, the Maharaja of MASH. I mean, he had like something like 25 nicknames, and they were all fantastic. But the other thing about Ruth that's interesting, and a theory as to why he was given up to the orphanage, was that he was half black, and that his mother had an affair, right, and given birth to him, or the father had a child out of wedlock. They're not sure which. I think it was the father, because if you look at pictures of Babe Ruth's father, I mean, doppelganger. They look exactly alike. It's ridiculous, right? So it's possible he was called a lot of derogatory names throughout. And is it possible? It's possible. A lot of people call him the first black athlete. I don't know, but he had facial features that defined him as one, but also they believe it's the reason why he was not allowed to manage after he retired, and why he was hated by so many people in baseball. But he made money and he passed for white. There were a lot of players of color who passed for white who actually played in baseball. A lot of Mexicans, Cubans, Native Americans. It's an interesting theory. I don't know if I buy it or not, but who knows? But the other point that Ruth makes here, oh yeah, the Italian syringes. So he did get those steroids from Italy.
Ruth, that may be way too soon, but I'm calm. I'm not talking about those.
The called shot. So this was from the 1932 World Series. I believe they were playing the Chicago. Yeah, it was the Chicago Cubs. They were playing in Wrigley Field. It was either game 2 or 3 of the series. and Ruth was down 1 strike, and the pitcher was kind of trash talking him, and he pointed up his finger and said, "Hey, just 1 strike," right? And then he took the next pitch for strike 2, and the pitcher again was talking crap, and he puts up his fingers and he said, "Hey, that's just 2." And then he says, "You only need," this is the story, I believe, "you only need 1," right? And a lot of people took that point as he was calling his shot, because he was pointing to the center field, and that's where he hit the next ball. Dead center, he hit a home run. Again, a lot of people say he called a shot, but then again, he called a lot of shots during his career. Most of them just never worked out, right? So calling your shot is one thing, but did he actually mean it and do it? Probably not, but it's a great story.
Talents or wedges you brought, the something or swat will knock you right out of the park and round the bases to the sound of uproaring applause while you hang your head in shame and disgrace because you got lost and forgot what real sportsmanship was. You look
Exactly. That's what I was saying. And I know people are going to say, "Eddie, you are such a Babe Ruth defender." Look, I am a fanatic when it comes to baseball. The history of baseball, you could just take a look. Let me just show you my living room. This is just a little piece of my collection there. Those are all hand-signed items. Willie Mays jersey, Duke Snyder, Stan Musial, that big Joe DiMaggio in the top right corner. To the left, the Reggie Jackson jersey, Ted Williams. I got Mantle, Pujols, Roger Maris, Griffey Jr. is there too. It's not all just Yankees, but a lot. So I'm a huge collector. I love the history. I mean, I'm just obsessed with it, yes. But in all honesty, it's not like Lance Armstrong is even comparable to someone like Ruth. Because number 1 of the cheating and number 2 of the impact, right? We're still talking about this man who was born in 1895 in 2022. He is the measuring stick for his sport. Ruthian, right? Whenever you describe somebody who does something that's powerful, sets some sort of batting record or hits a long home run. Look at that. It's a Ruthian run, a Ruthian season. Barry Bonds, when he was breaking all those records, who were they comparing him to? Babe Ruth, of course, because he's still the measuring stick. It's still his records that people are breaking and trying to break 100 years after they were set. So I'm not going to apologize for, the defense of Ruth, because a lot of people downplay Ruth and they say, "Oh, if he played today, he'd hit 200. Okay. Yeah, if you put somebody 100 years in the future from now, they're also going to suck at what they do. Take a baseball player now and teleport him 100 years in the future. See what happens.
tired, kid. You got Cheryl Crow's feet eyes. Head on to France and maybe bring me back some fries. But if you step to Ruth in the mic, I'll fan your fancy bike and all. You're out for 3 strikes and just 1 ball.
Yes, I was waiting for it. I was like, when is Ruth going to talk about this man's balls? I have never in my life wanted a man to discuss another man's balls so hard as I did here. So let's go back to the Sheryl Crow line.
Tired, kid. You got Cheryl Crow's feet eyes.
Sheryl Crow's feet eyes. So great play on words. He says, "You look tired. You know, this battle rap here, I'm killing it." And of course, Lance Armstrong was in a relationship with Sheryl Crow. But he says, "You looking so tired, I can see some Sheryl Crow's feet eyes there." Pedal home to France.
Home to France and maybe bring me back some fries. But if you step to Ruth in the mic, I'll fan your fancy bike and all.
I'll fan your fancy bike and all if you step to the mic. So, of course, before he was a hitter and a batter, Babe Ruth was a pitcher and one of the, if not the most dominant left-handed pitcher in the league at the time. Again, he set insane records at the time. He had the consecutive scoreless streak. I think it was like 29 or 27 innings he pitched scoreless in the World Series. He had almost 100 wins to his name before he switched over to batting. He had a sub-3 ERA. I think it was like 2.4, 2.5 ERA. So the man was an amazing pitcher, and it's something we see. And again, this year's MVP, Shohei Ohtani, who are they comparing him to? Babe Ruth, right? Because that's the only comparison you can make for a two-way player who's that dominant pitching as he is at hitting. So he's doing something, again, only one man did over 100 years ago. Nobody else has done it, right? And again, I'm actually, if you ask me, like, who's the greatest baseball player of all time, baseball player all around, I'm going to say Willie Mays. Willie Mays is by far the greatest all-around baseball player who did everything. But who's the greatest home run hitter, right? Who's one of the greatest hitters of all time? Of course, it's Ruth. When you think of power, you think of Ruth. You're talking about a man who also has a career 342 batting average. You're talking about a man who hit 390 in one season, who was 5 hits away from hitting 400. So it's not like Ruth was a slouch striking out 200 times a season, you know? But yeah, I'll fan your fancy bike to fan somebody's to strike somebody out.
Fire out for 3 strikes and just 1 ball. Ball 1!
3 strikes and just 1 ball. Who won? Well, check out my next video coming out a little later today, where I'll be scoring the battle with, of course, my trademarked categories. But this was a great one. This one was worth the wait. I want to thank everybody who joined today, everybody who's been supporting me. I mean, it just means the world, fam. Love y'all, and I'll catch you in the next video. Fam! And shouting out the Patreons as always, starting off with the Chancellor tier, Alex, John Alonzo, and Windwalker. The Principal tier, Addison Lynn, Blue Tech, Chad A, Clement, Freeman, Laura, Murikakari, Nathan, Punk, Quiet J, Robin B, and Vijandra. I've been Teacher Eddie, and I'll catch you next time.